Have you ever felt like your hair is straight up disrespecting you? Like, no matter what oil you use, what hair mask you try, what prayer you send up to it, what positive affirmation you speak, your hair just seems like it will not grow. But I need you to stay with me because I'm about to put you on game. Yes, your hair is growing. However, you just don't know where it's going. So today we're talking about the hair growth cycle. Your hair has a whole little system that it follows. And if you don't understand it, you'll keep feeling like your hair is ghosting you when really it's just following science. And because I love science, we're going to make it a little bit fun. Let's get into it. If you're new here, my name is Kendra and I'm the founder of 180 Hair. I help women over the age of 40 restore their hair health using natural holistic solutions. All right, now here's the deal. Your hair is constantly moving through 4 phases. And this ain't no one and done type of situation, friend. It's a whole process. So let's break it down really quickly. Now, the first phase is the anagen phase. Let's think of this phase as like the main character energy phase, all right? This is the time when your hair is actually growing. It's out here living its best life, honey. This is the phase where your strands are actually doing the most. They're thriving. You're hitting all your inches. This is the prime era. This is the stage that you want your hair to be in all the time. Unfortunately, it's not, right? But it's glowing, it's flourishing, it's getting compliments left and right. But here's the catch. Not all of your hair is in this anagen stage at the same time. At any given moment, 85 to 90% of your hair is growing, while the rest is taking a little break. And we'll get to that in a little bit. So if you ever looked in the mirror and thought, why is some of my hair looking like it's growing and the rest of it is looking kind of crazy? This phase is probably why, because not all of your hair is in the same phase at any given time. Okay. So the next thing is, how long does this phase last? Now, this is the phase that can last the longest, anywhere from 2 to 7 years, depending on factors like genetics, health, and hair care habits. So how long does this phase last? Now, the growth phase can last anywhere from 2 to 7 years. And this all depends on things like your genetics, your health, your hair care habits, etc. So yes, some of you all can have strands that could have literally lived through an entire college degree before shedding. So like your hair could have had enough time to enroll in college, struggle through finals, switch majors, graduate, and still be growing. So why do some people have longer growth phases than others? Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting, okay? So if your anagen phase or your growth phase is naturally on the shorter side, you might struggle to grow super long hair. And this is because your strands exit the growth phase too quickly. Now, if you're blessed with a longer anagen phase, honey, like you peaking at 5 to 7 years every time, then you have more time to rack up on those inches before your hair sheds and starts over. Now, this is why some people seem to grow hair effortlessly while other people seem to be stuck at a certain length for such a long time. It's not just about products, okay? It's about how long your hair stays in the growth phase before moving on to the next phase. So the question is, can you make your hair stay in the growth phase longer? Now, that is $1 million question, my friend, because if we can figure out how to extend this phase, then we can maximize hair growth, right? And finally get past the point of my hair never grows past this point. And that's exactly what I teach inside of my course, Hair Rehab. And it's going to teach you how to keep your hair in the growth phase as long as possible by doing specific things to nourish your follicles, avoid common mistakes, and make sure your scalp is thriving in an environment that is conducive to hair growth. Okay, so now we are on the second phase, the catagen phase. We're going to call this the transition phase or the situationship phase. All right. So we just talked about the anagen phase, the time when your hair is thriving, and it's growing, and it's living its best life, right? But now we got to talk about the messy middle. This is the phase where your hair is kind of unsure of its future. Enter the catagen phase. So what happens during this phase? In this phase, your hair stops growing completely because it's transitioning. It's not breaking off, it's not shedding, but it's not getting any longer either. It's just there. It's just waiting to move on. This phase lasts about 10 days to 2 weeks, okay? So it's a quick little in-between moment before we hit the next phase. All right, now the point of this phase is your hair follicle, or the hair follicle underneath your scalp, underneath the surface of your scalp is where your follicle is actually shrinking, okay? And it's preparing to detach from the blood supply. So remember, the blood supply is how you get nutrients to the follicle. So that's an important thing to remember. Now, think of this like moving out of an apartment, okay? Your hair is packing its bag, it's turning in the keys, it's getting ready for a new tenant, aka a new strand of hair. The follicle shrinks by about 1/6 of its original size during this time. So it's actually getting smaller before the next cycle begins. Now, why this matters for your hair health. This phase is completely normal, okay? But if something disrupts it, like stress, hormonal imbalances, certain medications, okay, your hair can stay stuck in this transition phase longer than it should. And when that happens, your hair won't grow or shed properly. What does that lead to? Thinning, unfortunately. Now, if everything goes right, your hair moves on quickly to the next phase. But if not, you now have issues with length retention. You have issues with thinning, and you have issues with hair that feels stuck at the same length for a very long time. Can you stop the catagen phase? No, you cannot. This phase is 100% necessary for your hair cycle. But what you can do is make sure you are supporting your follicles so that they move through this phase smoothly without any issues. And the ways you can do that is, of course, to reduce stress, keep your hormones balanced, keep your scalp clean and healthy, and then, of course, eat nutrient-rich foods to support your follicle health. So I want you to get out of hair limbo, friends. If you think that this is where your hair is stuck and you feel like it's been stuck there forever, or like you're shedding your hair more than usual, this phase might be where you have the problem. But don't worry, we can fix that. The third phase is the telogen phase. This is the resting phase. We're going to call this the lazy phase. All right. So we made it through the thriving area. That's your anagen. We survived the awkward transition phase. That's the catagen. And now we are in the telogen phase, where your hair is just straight up refusing to do anything. So what's happening in this phase? Imagine your hair putting on a robe, grabbing a glass of wine, and plopping down on the couch and saying, I need a break. That's basically what's happening here. This phase lasts for about 3 to 4 months. And during this time, your hair is completely at rest. Okay. Now, don't panic, because this is a normal part of the cycle. About 10 to 15% of your hair is in this phase at any given time. But the key thing to know is nothing is growing. Your hair is literally just chilling. A quick little note, what's going on underneath the scalp. Your hair strand is still attached to the follicle, but it's not growing anymore. Okay. The follicle is kind of in an awkward waiting period before kicking the older hair out to make way for the new one. Now, when the telogen phase becomes a problem, here's the issue. Normally, this phase is nothing to worry about. Okay. So remember, in each of your hair cycle phases, there are things that can go wrong to affect how your hair behaves in that particular phase. In the telogen phase, if too many hairs enter the telogen phase at once, like more than the 15% that I spoke of before, that's when you start seeing noticeable shedding and thinning. So you go to that 50 to 100 hairs a day that's normal to significantly more hairs shedding. Okay. Now, this is called telogen effluvium, and it can be triggered by things like stress, illness, hormonal changes, and poor diet. So you see, we kind of have a theme here. These things in your life can affect all the parts or all the phases of your hair growth cycle. So that's why it's important to create some type of balance in your life. Okay. Your hair will basically be like, yeah, we're just gonna take a break. And actually, it's too many of them. It's too many of your hairs that decide we just gonna take a break. Okay. And that's how this becomes a problem. Now, if your hair stays in this phase too long, this lazy phase too long, it means fewer new strands are going to replace the ones that are shedding. Now, when you have less hairs replacing the hairs that are shedding, your hair starts to look thinner. It starts to look like you have less hairs on your head because that's actually what's happening. So you're losing the volume, okay, and you're not getting it back. Okay, so here's a funny analogy. Just humor me for a second because I know y'all like analogies and science is fun, okay? Now, think of your hair like a job. The anagen phase is when your hair is clocked in, it's working overtime, it's making money. The catagen phase is like a 2-week notice. It's about to leave, but it's still showing up at the office. And then the telogen phase, which is the third phase we've discussed, it's like that one coworker that shows up to work, but they ain't doing nothing. And you know they ain't doing nothing. They just there taking up space, waiting for payday. That's the telogen or the shedding phase. And just like in an office, if too many people decide to slack off at one time, you know nothing is going to get done, right? Everything will basically fall apart. And that's what happens when your hair gets stuck in that third phase, okay? Now, the telogen phase on average lasts about 100 days or 3 to 4 months, somewhere in there. And once it's over, the hair finally sheds and the cycle starts over again. So you go back to the anagen phase. All right, friend, we finally made it. Phase number 4, the actual shedding phase. We'll call this phase Bye Felicia. Do people still say Bye Felicia? Now, we went through the thriving phase. That's the anagen. I'm going to keep repeating these so you can get it in your head. We started with the anagen phase. We moved to the catagen phase. We talked about the telogen phase, and now we are ready for the grand finale, which is the exogen phase. All right. Now, this is the moment when your hair literally walks out the door. So what's happening here? Now, imagine this. Your hair has been through some good times with you. It's been moisturized. It's had good days. It's had bad days. It's had a little heat damage here and there. It's had a little neglect sometimes, some tight ponytails, some tight hairstyles. But now it's decided to pack up and leave. And that's what's happening here. So let's clear something up really quick. Exogen versus breakage. So when you think about the exogen phase, this is the natural shedding process. This is when the hair strand actually releases from the follicle and falls out. Okay. So I want you to understand the difference between that and breakage. So shedding is natural, all right? It happens when the hair actually reaches the end of the growth cycle, but breakage is damage. Breakage equals damage, and it's also preventable. When your hair snaps off prematurely due to dryness, heat damage, or rough detangling, or whatever, what have you, these hairs will be shorter and they won't have, sometimes when your hair naturally sheds, they'll have the little white bulb on the end. If it's breakage, you won't see that. You'll see a much shorter strand that's just a broken piece of hair or a broken strand that has snapped off due to the reasons that I explained. Okay, so moral of the story, shedding is normal, breakage is a problem. What if your hair is shedding excessively? You're losing more than 100 hairs per day. Your hair is thinning noticeably. The part looks wider. If you part your hair in a specific place, it looks wider. You can see more of your scalp, or you see big clumps of hair in the shower or on your pillow. Now, if you're noticing any of these, it's probably something is pushing your hair or pushing too many hairs into this phase at once. It can happen because, again, stress, poor nutrition, hormonal changes, medications, or even major life events. Okay. Yes, even bad breakups can make your hair fall out too. So, how long does the exogen phase last? For most people, a few weeks to a couple of months. All right. And after that, the follicle resets. It does its sciencey thing. It resets itself and it kicks off a brand new growth phase. So then the growth cycle starts all over again from the growth phase. And that, my friends, is how your hair cycle works. Okay. Your hair is always growing. It's always shedding naturally, and it's always regrowing, whether you realize it or not. So let's talk about where the hair growth cycle goes wrong and why your hair feels stuck. So now that you've got the hair growth cycle down packed, let's talk about what can throw it off and make it feel like your hair is just not growing. So I'm going to go through these 4 reasons really quickly. Remember, there can be a number of reasons why your hair may shed prematurely or break off and all of those things. But here are 4 that are probably the most popular. So if your hair is shedding more than usual, that normally means that you have too many strands in the exogen phase. Too many strands entering the exogen phase too soon. So again, the things we talked about can cause this. Basically, your hair is just quitting before it even gets a chance to thrive. All right. The second reason is your anagen phase is too short. So remember the anagen phase, the growth phase, the main character energy. Some people naturally have a longer anagen phase. Some people naturally have a shorter one. Genetics do play a role, but for many of us, poor hair care habits, inflammation, lack of nutrients, stress, and hormonal imbalances keep the hair from growing as long as it should. This is why you feel like your hair stops growing at a certain length. It's not breaking, it's just exiting the growth phase way too soon. So another reason your hair growth cycle can go wrong is you have breakage before growth, okay? So if your hair is growing but breaking just as fast as it's growing, it could feel like it's not growing at all, right? So things like dryness, rough detangling, heat damage, these are common culprits, all right? Now your hair actually might be flourishing at the root, but if the ends are snapping off, then there are some things that you need to change. All right, and then the last thing, of course, is the scalp. Healthy scalp equals healthy hair. If your scalp is clogged, if your scalp has inflammation, excessive fungus and bacteria, if it's lacking circulation, your follicles may just be like, nah, we're good, and they'll just stay dormant. Think of it like trying to grow a garden in dry, cracked soil. It's just not going to work. Now that you know what's happening, okay, what's the next move? What's the next move, Kendra? How do we fix it and get your hair to stay in the growth phase longer? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's exactly what I teach inside of my hair rehab course. So inside the course, we'll tackle exactly some of the things that we talked about here today, like how to reset your hair growth cycle and keep your hair in the anagen phase longer. Identify the real reason your hair isn't thriving, because it's going to be different for everybody. It's going to help you build a hair care routine that actually supports your follicles instead of stressing them out. And it's going to cover so much more. If you want to be the first to access the course when it drops, I'll leave a link in the description below. No pressure. You can keep getting these little pieces of content for free, or you can join the waitlist. So if you're ready to stop guessing and start taking control of your hair health, go ahead and sign up. Your future hair is counting on you, my friend. And remember, as always, you deserve hair that's healthy and growing. It's my mission to help you get there. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.